director of the Centre for the Study of Modern Monarchy. And we go to Malta, to Kapara to be precise. There we see Simon Cousins, a colonial-era historian who met the Queen in 2005, Malta being an island that she was very, very attached to. Simon will talk to you in a moment about the kind of reception Her Majesty got, because it was there in 2015 that she and Prince Philip performed their last overseas trip. So it really did hold a special place for her. Bear with me while we talk about other than just the fact that she reigned for 70 years. There was something that made her very different. What was it?
Well, it was far more than just the length of her reign. It was her dedication to duty. It was the way she nurtured the Commonwealth. It was also her empathy. The best example I can think of, and I mean this is comparatively recent and it shows how and that was at the beginning of the pandemic, speaking to the nation where so many were deeply worried and deeply troubled, and quoting Britain Times sweetheart Napier and saying, "We will meet again." And people knew, of course, that she had been there, as subsequently the broadcast of the 75th anniversary of VE Day showed, and her experience from the first royal duty that she undertook in 1942, when her father, George VI, made her Colonel of the Grenadier Guards, she has conducted her reign in an exemplary way. What 21, the famous pledge that she made in Cape Town, and subsequently, of course, constitutionally, the perfect monarch, growing up admittedly in an age of difference and never giving an interview, but on the other hand, even though we didn't know what she thought of important issues of the day, we did know, as prime ministers always found out, she was always keen to listen, always also keen on the Commonwealth. So whereas it could be argued that Britain lost an empire and not found a role going into the EEC, later EU, and then out of it with Brexit, it could also be argued that the Queen was the one constant that we had, and in a time of absolutely seismic change. And also we must pay tribute to Prince Philip, because it was the partnership between the two of them, I think, that was so productive, very different in temperament, and yet so mutually supportive. And she was somebody who was deeply religious in a secular age, but I think that gave her strength too, and people loved her. One bears in mind Elizabeth I's famous golden speech, "Though God hath raised me high, I bear the glory of my crown, that I have reigned with your love." Well, that is what the people felt. A decade which was unutterably awful. There were one or two moments, visit to South Africa in 1995 and Britannia to welcome in the democracy of Nelson Mandela, but it was one of these ghastly decades, because the annus horribilis, which, I mean, after all, we had the circumstance where Charles and Diana were quite literally at war. There was the terrifying experience of, because the princess was superb at PR, of seeing her in front of the Taj Mahal and he wasn't there, and of course the visit to Korea, that put paid to any idea that there might be a couple and coexist in a separate way, as John Major implied when they separated.
Let me ask you this, sorry about that. Do you think she ever let out?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, the way she handled it in the Christmas broadcast in 1992, yes, there is another reference to the annus horribilis. But in fact, it's not the way she believed that you could separate public and the private, I think, although the private had become so public. I mean, the Morton book, the Dimbleby interview and the admission of adultery, the Dimbleby book, which where Charles said that she was cold and distant, and certainly Duke of Edinburgh was, and then also the Panorama interview, who precedently obtained, as we know now, but all of these were shocking at that time, and of course pretty unprecedented.
Absolutely.
Much of the Oprah interview was unprecedented. That's the other period you mentioned. I mean, one has to mention the last 2.5 years, because with Andrew's disgrace and clearly with the Sussexes stepping down as senior working royals and then feeling as bitter as they have, the Oprah interview did so much damage, especially when it came to the young and persons of colour. If you look at the polls are otherwise overwhelmingly favourable.
But we're talking about the institution of monarchy there, rather than the Queen individually, if I may say. And
I think she brought something to all people. I mean, we just heard her extraordinary personal qualities, which were missing in some of her predecessors historically, I think we can safely say. Part of the way that she managed the transition of monarchy from the 50s to the modern era, it was a very long period, was this whole business of managing the magic getting inside, or possibly even conversely, the magic getting outside, and just leaving enough of that mystery in order for on the one hand, the authority and the majesty of the role to retain its ancient luster, while on the other hand, having that degree of connectivity and with the individual, with the normal person. It's a very difficult balancing act to do. We've seen difficulties with how the Spanish have done it with Juan Carlos in recent years. The Scandinavians and the Dutch have done it in a much more casual way. So to actually do with the UK and to achieve that delivery of change over what have been quite tempestuous political times.
Anna, let me ask you. Oh, beg your pardon. Anna, let me ask you this.
I think that's exactly it, and that I think is probably her greatest achievement, that she managed to maintain support, popularity, and a sense of sort of relevance for the monarchy, which of course is this age-old anachronistic institution built on privilege, not on merit, about birthright. It's not inclusive. It's everything at odds with the age. But somehow she managed to maintain its place in modern Britain, and she herself had a kind of medieval-like monarchical quality of sort of elusive charisma. She maintained the mystique, the magic of monarchy somehow, the reverence for the royal body, the sense of not touching the body of the Queen. These were all very age-old kind of notions. But she somehow managed to preserve that mystique of monarchy in the full glare of a modern media. And in fact, the monarchy that has emerged over the course of her reign is one that is underpinned by this relationship with the media. That is absolutely central to the relationship and the brand now of monarchy. It's a relationship with the media. And of course, that relationship was cast in many ways by Prince Philip II, with the coronation of the Queen being televised for the first time. So yeah, she's been ushering in a kind of change, but very gentle change. But I think more than that, maintaining the mystique of centuries-old monarchy in modern Britain. And I think that sort of conundrum that somehow she's managed to maintain so successfully is actually quite remarkable, and I think it's going to be an incredibly difficult feat for the new King Charles.
Yes, as you rightly say, she spent some time here, she lived here, and she lived here as the metaphorical fairy tale princess before the weight of her professional duties. She always referred to Malta as the Isle of Happy Memories. She spent her 24th birthday here. She spent one Christmas here, and rumors abound whether Prince Charles was actually conceived here as well. So every time Her Majesty used to mention Malta, you could detect a certain fondness and affection, no doubt. Malta undoubtedly left its mark on Her Majesty. She was very fond of Maltese oranges, and I know that offline, well behind officialdom, she used to receive every now and again a consignment of her favorite Malta oranges. There was a reaction, always a positive reaction, whenever she received letters from Malta. you know, she was a wonderful lady for us Maltese. She will always be the queen of Maltese hearts. Let's not forget, she was our sovereign. She was our last queen. Until the early 70s, she was still head of state. So we have to come to terms with the loss. We're a very proud, sovereign, independent nation, but there is something missing. She's taken a piece of our hearts with her, no doubt.
And as we